button. To stream other great series, log in to ABC iView.
Tonight, apology accepted. The Prime Minister forgives his deputy for calling him a liar.
What people send around in texts, I frankly could not care less about.
Good evening, I'm Jeremy Fernandez. This is ABC News Sunday. Good news for light rail commuters in Sydney's inner west. Homes are destroyed in Western Australia as hundreds of firefighters battle huge blazes. Could there one day be a Queen Camilla? Queen Elizabeth offers her support to the Duchess of Cornwall in a special message marking a platinum jubilee. And Australia's first medal of the Beijing Winter Olympics. Tess Cody wins bronze in the women's slopestyle snowboarding final.
That was wild and that was so insane. I'm dying. I have so many words.
The Prime Minister says he has forgiven Barnaby Joyce for calling him a hypocrite and a liar in an explosive text message sent last year. It's the second damaging leak in the space of a week, but Scott Morrison is trying to move on from the drama, declaring that politics is a brutal business. Here's political reporter Jane Norman.
Delivering Sunday morning absolution.
Human frailty, it's real. We all share it.
The Prime Minister forgives his deputy for his sins.
People get angry, people get bitter. So who am I to be judging someone else?
And attempts to turn the other cheek in the face of another insider attack.
What people send around in texts, I frankly could not care less about.
In a leaked text message from March last year, Barnaby Joyce called Scott Morrison a hypocrite and a liar. Words he now says he regrets.
I'd like to start where I finished and unreservedly apologise to the Prime Minister.
A backbencher at the time.
And when he was in a pretty dark place, blaming a lot of people.
Mr Joyce claims he didn't know the real Scott Morrison until he became the Deputy Prime Minister.
His observations of me in that relationship has completely transformed his view that he had as a backbencher at a time when his head was in a very different place.
But the year-old character assessment is a gift to the opposition.
It seems like the people who know Scott Morrison the best trust him the least.
And with mere months until the federal election, Liberals are questioning whether the Prime Minister can turn that perception around.
Is Scott Morrison the asset that he was 3 years ago for you in a campaign?
The circumstances are very different now. He's a great campaigner. He has been very focused on the job of getting us through the pandemic.
Is that what you're saying? It's different now.
I'd like to... we need to get him out talking to people.
Desperate to shift the focus, the Home Affairs Minister announced the imminent reopening of Australia's borders. The details, though, to be determined.
We're going through the process of preparing to open.
What's most damaging about this latest leak is that the damning critique of Scott Morrison's character has once again come from his own side. With the Prime Minister down, the Liberals' first attack ad suggests their strategy is to try and bring the Labor leader down with him.
What do we actually know about Anthony Albanese?
An attempt to define him before voters do. Jane Norman, ABC News, Canberra.
The number of reported COVID cases is continuing to fall in New South Wales, back to the lowest level since late December. But what's concerning health officials is the poor uptake of boosters. It's prompting a new ad campaign to encourage people to get their third shot.
Just look at Brad. It's like yoga.
You have distracted me very much.
Calming the needle nerves, one at a time.
Gee, you're well done getting your booster.
The state government's upping the ante on encouraging booster uptake. While more than 94% of people 16 and over have had 2 jabs, the third dose rate is well below, at 43.5%.
We know the science is in, the medicine is in, the research is in. Boosters make a difference.
A COVID-19 booster. Have you had yours?
To spread the message en masse, the state government's turned to ads in 19 different languages to encourage people to get their third shot.
Gone are the days of the queues. Many of you would have got vaccinated at this centre here in Homebush and had to line up. Those lines are no longer here.
Reported COVID cases are falling. Today, a second day with cases below 10,000. 28 more people have died, and hospitalisations continue to fall. As COVID continues exacting a financial toll on businesses and households, the state government's brought forward a handout for families with school-aged children.
It's a bit heavier now, hey?
From tomorrow, they can access 5 $50 vouchers through the Service New South Wales app to use at a range of businesses similar to the Dine and Discover program.
I think for us it'll probably just be a matter of getting out and about, catching up with friends that we haven't been able to see as much of over the last sort of couple of months with all the COVID dramas.
The kids have been cooped up or locked down, so, we've been promising a trip to the zoo for, 2 years now.
Cooped up kids has meant quiet school camps. Businesses that were impacted by school restrictions last year will be able to apply for a one-off payment of up to $15,000.
It will be certainly an injection of funds that will make it a lot easier for these guys to get back on their feet.
Cash and jabs in a bid to leave COVID woes behind. Tim Swanston, ABC News, Sydney.
There are calls for an urgent independent investigation into the privately run Junee prison in the Riverina region after 2 recent deaths in custody. It's believed one of the inmates who died had COVID. Advocates have expressed concerns about how the prison is being run and how COVID-positive inmates are being cared for.
2 inmates, a 47-year-old man and a 48-year-old woman, died in custody in Junee Jail late last month. Prison authorities say both were found unresponsive in their cells and pronounced dead a short time later. It's believed the male inmate had COVID. An investigation is underway, with the operator of the privately run prison saying corrective services and police are investigating the incidents. All deaths in custody are subject to a coronial inquest.
2 deaths within 3 days. It is a prison that's in crisis.
No one should be going to prison and coming out in a body bag. I mean, I do understand if you die of old age in jail or something, you can't prevent that. But I'm a big believer that a lot of these deaths could have been prevented if someone had cared or Justice Health had done their job.
This woman's son is in Junee Jail with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. She says his mental health issues are not being adequately addressed.
He's living in an actual nightmare at the moment with his mental health.
She's asked for their names not to be used as she's worried about repercussions, but wants to speak out.
He has made mistakes, he's made mistakes, but he's paying for those mistakes now. He doesn't have to pay extra by living in a mental health torture.
She says her son's spiral downwards began as a child after the death of an older sister. She's one of many wanting an independent investigation into how the Junee facility is being run in the wake of the latest deaths.
What we need now is an urgent investigation by the Inspector of Custodial Services to be on the ground, talking to inmates, working out what's going wrong with the medical treatment.
There's a full investigation going on at the moment, instituted by the Government Corrections Health, Forensic Health, and hopefully that will give some insights into what has actually occurred.
Advocates are also calling for family visits to be reinstated and ongoing prison lockdowns to be lifted. Jean Kennedy, ABC News.
Sydney's Inner West Light Rail service will resume after being closed months ago. The tram service has been down since November after cracks were found in the carriages. A report by the Spanish manufacturer warned that high turning speeds could have been partly to blame.
It's been an unfortunate situation where that service has been taken offline. There will be a slight reduction in the frequency, but there will be a service every 15 minutes. You will also see a reduction in the fare as a sign of goodwill from the government.
Make no mistake, the government has cobbled together a band-aid solution to a transport disaster completely of their making.
The service will resume on Saturday. A man has been injured and at least 5 homes have been destroyed in bushfires in WA. The 2 blazes have been burning for days at emergency level, and late today a 3rd major fire ramped up, threatening lives and homes. The New South Wales Rural Fire Service has sent 36 specialists to help.
Fires raging on multiple fronts. WA's emergency services are battling blazes across the state's southwest. Properties have been destroyed in Denmark on the south coast.
Our rapid damage assessment team has identified 4 homes that have been lost to date and 1 that has been damaged. They're also reporting another 4 structures that have been lost.
The blaze doubling in size in a single night.
The most southern, one of the most southern parts of our state, to have a fire double in size overnight is not territory we've been in often before.
Further north at Bridgetown, another blaze turned into an emergency, forcing the evacuation of residents and the local hospital.
All our important things are here. We've got our family here and that's the main thing, and we're safe, so that was our main concern.
Not everyone was so lucky.
I understand a local resident was burnt, fighting the fire early in the fire yesterday afternoon. I understand he's in a serious condition.
Properties have been lost in Bridgetown too, including 2 Shire buildings and 1 house.
Though it appears the weather may be easing for parts of the state, the situation in the emergency warning areas continues to remain dire.
While emergency services are stretched, help is on the way. A unit from New South Wales arrived this afternoon, while a 3rd heavy water bomber is now also available to help crews on the ground. Tom Wildey, ABC News.
The Prime Minister was among dignitaries who've today remembered 4 children who were killed by a drunk driver 2 years ago in Sydney's northwest. Siblings Sienna, Angelina and Anthony Abdullah and their cousin Veronique Sarker were walking to get ice creams in Oatlands when an out-of-control ute hit them. Today, hundreds of people attended a memorial service in Parramatta to remember the lives lost. The families started the charity I Forgive to demonstrate and encourage forgiveness.
It has been a tough journey. We are heartbroken. We miss our kids every single day. They are part of our life. We are amputated, learning to live with our amputation.
The man who was driving the car is serving a 28-year jail sentence. The mission to rescue a boy trapped in a well in Morocco has ended in tragedy. There was initial excitement when emergency crews finally reached 5-year-old Rayan, pulling him from where he'd been stuck 32 metres underground for 4 days. But then the King of Morocco issued an official statement announcing the boy had died. He has spoken to Rayan's parents. Morocco had been gripped by the complex mission to save the boy, which had been hampered by fears of a landslide. The first US troops reinforcing NATO allies in Eastern Europe have landed in Germany as tensions with Russia escalate. The American soldiers will set up new headquarters to support 1,700 paratroopers poised to deploy in Poland. A shipment of US weapons for Ukraine has also landed in the capital, Kiev. It's part of the American response to the build-up of 100,000 Russian troops along Ukraine's border. In the latest developments, Russia has flown a pair of long-range nuclear-capable bombers in aerial drills over Belarus. Queen Elizabeth has expressed her wish that Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, be known as Queen Consort when Prince Charles becomes king. The couple has issued a statement to say they are touched and honoured. As Europe correspondent Nick Dole reports, today marks the 70th anniversary of the Queen's reign.
A newly crowned Queen is cheered through the streets of London by an adoring public. Celebrations like these have been repeated for 7 decades. There have been countless highs, but the past year has delivered a series of lows. The Queen's son, Prince Andrew, is accused of sexual assault. He denies it, but with a potentially damaging civil trial looming, she's stripped him of his royal responsibilities.
When it looked as if he was become a danger to the reputation, even perhaps the long-term survival of the monarchy, there was ruthlessness.
Harry and Meghan's interview with Oprah exposed major fault lines in the family. Allegations of racism painted a picture of an institution that was out of touch. Just a few weeks later, the Queen lost her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, a man she described as her strength and stay. Royal watchers say the monarch is making room for a new generation to rise.
It's quite telling that, in recent photographs and portraits, we've seen the Queen with Prince Charles, Prince William and Prince George. There is the future.
And she's warmed to the Duchess of Cornwall, who's gone from being an outsider to a trusted senior royal. To mark her jubilee, the monarchs declared Camilla should be not just a princess, but a queen. While this weekend officially marks the Platinum Jubilee, the palace is keeping things low-key, with a much bigger celebration promised later this year. But there is one event planned, a challenge to find a dessert that's fit for a queen. British bakers are sending in entries for a so-called platinum pudding. Gwyneth Boys and her blind baking group think the Queen will love their meringue pie.
I'm sure she would. I know she likes honey, so that's why we put honey in the cream.
And the royal seal of approval would be the icing on the cake. Nick Dole, ABC News, London.
Still to come on ABC News Sunday.
I'm Matthew Doran in the Melbourne electorate of Chisholm, one of the most marginal and multicultural anywhere in the country. After 2 years of pandemic living, Australians will head to the polls in a matter of months. We're taking a look at the issues which could sway voters in must-win seats like this one.
If you have a young child, you'll be familiar with the particular challenges of parenting during the pandemic. Kids under 5 are yet to be vaccinated, and the Omicron variant has caused chaos in the childcare sector. North America correspondent Jade McMillan has met a group of women in the United States doing what they can to take back control.
As darkness falls over Boston, therapist Sarah Harmon prepares for an unusual kind of session. All of the women here are mums, and after 2 years of parenting through a pandemic, they've had enough.
I would suggest, kind of casually, I think maybe what we just need to do is get in a field and scream. Because it's safe, we can socially distance, and we can let some of these emotions process. And people said, let's do it. Why not?
Cool trick, please go ahead and find your name. One of the biggest challenges facing parents is access to childcare, with the highly infectious Omicron strain forcing kids into quarantine and centres to close. This facility caters to low-income families that can't afford to miss out.
If mom can't go to work or dad can't go to work, there's no work. So when pandemic hit, we knew we had to find a way to stay open as much as we could.
To make that happen, a not-for-profit organisation run by 2 local women pushed the state of Massachusetts to provide free rapid antigen tests to enable a so-called test-to-stay program. It means symptomatic kids or those considered close contacts can still come in each day as long as they test negative for 5 days in a row.
The difference between every exposure, meaning 5 to 10 days out of work, and 5 to 10 days working, can be the difference between keeping and losing your job. It can be the difference between keeping and losing your home.
The testing programs here are helping centres like this one to stay open, but many argue a lot more support is needed for a sector that was already struggling before the pandemic.
Tens of thousands of mostly low-paid workers have left the industry in the US in the past 2 years. And when childcare is difficult to come by, researchers like Jessica Calarco argue mothers are more likely to cut back on their own work to fill the gap.
We treat women as our social safety net. We expect them to hold everything together when the world is falling apart.
It's not just childcare putting parents under pressure. Maryland mother Sharonda Tack feels as though life is on hold until her 4-year-old son can be vaccinated.
You're tearing your hair out, you're frustrated. My biggest thing is, I feel like I can't keep my child safe. And that's the worst fear as a parent.
Pfizer has taken the first major step towards gaining approval from US authorities to offer its shots to children under the age of 5. But after earlier delays, many parents aren't getting their hopes up just yet. Instead, looking to others for inspiration on how to cope right now.
All you want to do is scream. And again, have a community of people you can scream with would be really nice.
Jade McMillan, ABC News, Boston.
Australia's economy is slowly getting back on track, but for roughly 1 million Australian homeowners, it's about to lead to something they haven't experienced before, a rise in interest rates. Here's Alan Kohler.
The last rate hike in Australia was November the 3rd, 2010, more than 11 years ago. The RBA cash rate went from 4.5 to 4.75%. The next one could be this year, from 0.1% probably to 0.25%, anytime from May onwards. And the futures market, in fact, thinks that the cash rate could be 1% by the end of the year. Here's what that would look like on a chart. Hardly terrifying, right? An absolute doddle, in fact, except for a couple of things. Here's the number of first home buyer loans that have been made since the last rate hike 11 years ago. 1,141,592. That's how many households have never experienced an increase in their interest rate. And as money became cheaper and banks became marketing machines instead of loan rationers, Australians learned to love debt. And as debt as a percentage of income pushed higher, so did house prices. Or was it the other way around? Anyway, interest rates are now going to be normalised because last week both the Reserve Bank Governor and the Prime Minister predicted that unemployment is going to fall below 4%. And in that situation, it's very difficult to justify abnormal interest rates. But the question is, what's normal? Because we've all forgotten. Let's have another look at that cash rate chart. Normal looks like 5%, doesn't it? And now here's the average variable mortgage rate. When the cash rate is 5%, the mortgage rate is about 7.5%. The last time that happened, 11 years ago, the average mortgage was $363,421, and repayments on that were $2,696 per month. Now the average mortgage is $602,035, and repayments on that at 7.5% interest would be $4,459 per month, $1,775 more. To make that after tax would require an extra $35,000 in annual salary, except that in the past 11 years, the average annual wage has only gone up $13,300. So maybe the RBA won't be able to normalise interest rates after all.
Now to tonight's special report. The lingering pandemic and intense cost of living pressures are promising to make the coming election campaign even more unpredictable than usual. Political reporter Matthew Doran has visited some hotly contested corners of the country to get a sense of what issues will sway people's votes.
The anticipation for better times ahead is palpable across the country. Lunar New Year in Melbourne, bringing a sense of renewal and hope, sentiments more than welcome in this pandemic-weary city. Despite the noise, celebrations are again muted this year, COVID-19 forcing many events to be cancelled, from the CBD to the suburbs.
Previous years we've had around about 60,000 to 100,000 people show up, and during COVID, that's not really a good thing.
Postponing Box Hill's festival, the obvious choice given soaring case numbers. Organising it in the first place, difficult enough.
I think we made 200 calls in one day asking for potential food vendors, and 70% of them came back bankrupt, like they were gone.
It's a familiar tale for many small businesses, not just in Melbourne. But this area happens to be in one of the nation's most marginal federal electorates. Just a handful of votes could decide the fate of Chisholm, currently held by the Liberals.
The vibe right now is day to day, right? You survive it and you win, right?
Stephen Zeng owns a number of restaurants in the area. One of his chefs died during the pandemic.
My first concern is the health of my family, my community. The second concern would be getting back to the normal way of life.
Carving out a new business model, lacking one basic ingredient.
Now out of lockdown, but with case numbers so high, it's still very difficult in terms of finding staff that wants to work in this kind of environment.
Stephen Zeng's not expecting more financial support from governments, but he's hungry for a coherent plan to help ensure his businesses can survive into the future.
Which is easier said than done. That's why these people are the leaders, right? They have to come up with the solutions.
Right now, there's literally nothing for these shop owners, and a lot of them are going out of business.
Like Stephen Zeng, Richard Shee grew up in Box Hill and says businesses which have served the area for 2 decades are closing their doors.
It's a very, very sad time.
He insists support can't solely be the responsibility of the states and territories.
We live in Australia. We live in Victoria. we do business in the city of Whitehorse. I think it's a team effort and there just needs to be some help for the small guys.
And while the economic toll of the pandemic is providing food for thought ahead of the election, the social cost is just as high, albeit less visible.
There's a huge increase of demand on our services, particularly for our family violence and elder abuse victim survivors.
The debate over family violence and the treatment of women more broadly has been one of the biggest political and social debates during the last term of Parliament. While welcoming the attention, those on the front line aren't entirely convinced real solutions are in the offing.
I think people are well-meaning, but it can appear to be very knee-jerk sometimes.
More funding always welcome, but better planning is key.
For those of us who have had first-hand experience of family violence, either ourselves or people that we love, or those of us who work in the family violence sector, definitely would be a vote changer in some way, but also because it is so emotive.
A world away from suburban Melbourne, Tasmania's picturesque Tamar Valley's been shielded from the worst of pandemic restrictions. But David Feldheim's vineyards have suffered in the past.
Most people don't get that smoke from bushfires can ruin a whole crop.
He lives in the ultra-marginal electorate of Bass, which the Liberals need to hold on to, protecting his family business so his kids can be the next generation of winemakers, front of mind at the ballot box.
It's just shocking. The complete lack of response to the bushfire approach and to the whole ogre of climate change, which I see as a farmer on the front line.
1,600 kilometres away in Brisbane, in the marginal Labor electorate of Griffith, Noam O'Reilly's on the hunt for a new house.
I've been a renter for 10 years now, and during the 10 years I've lived in 9 different places.
The home she currently rents is being sold by its owners.
I assume because the market is doing so well at the moment. This property sold for $610,000 in 2018, and it's now valued at 1.2 to 1.5 million.
After losing her job during the pandemic, Noam went back to university, finding an affordable place to live while juggling work and study, proving incredibly tough.
You're overhearing conversations where people are offering to pay 3 months rent in advance or hundreds of dollars over the weekly asking price just to secure a property.
Searching for accommodation and policies from the nation's leaders.
I think there's probably a problem with how we're discussing housing affordability and the divide that's created, the us versus them, landlords versus tenants, millennials versus boomers, if you like.
As the drumbeats of the election grow ever louder, the pandemic has brought some perennial political issues into even sharper focus. 2022 is the year of the tiger, an animal which symbolises strength, power and leadership, all traits that our political leaders will be hoping the public see in them during the campaign. But they'll have to wait until election day before they find out just how the nation has roared. Matthew Doran, ABC News, Melbourne.
Thousands of locals in Sydney's east are rallying against plans for a facility that would transform waste into energy. Residents say it could spew chemicals into the air and endanger their health, but the companies behind the idea say it would be good for the environment and the economy.
The O'Brien family spent 5 years looking for their ideal home and thought they'd found it here in Matraville. But they're worried that's about to change.
Where do you believe they're going to build the smokestack?
So it will be right there.
Just a block away is the Opal paper mill. It wants to power its plant by burning processed waste that would otherwise be destined for the tip.
To be in the immediate proximity of that level of pollution is a game changer for me, for sure.
165,000 tonnes would be burned each year, potentially freeing up enough gas and electricity to power 82,000 homes.
It is better than putting it in a hole, but it is not much better.
Residents are fighting back, raising awareness with letterbox drops. 19,000 people have already signed a petition rejecting the plan.
The main reason that we're opposing this is because it's actually going to have a long-term chronic effect on our health and there is a viable alternative. We don't need to burn stuff.
They've already put up with a port, an airport, a legacy of contamination, port noise as well as heavy vehicle movements, but this is just too much.
Bayside Council is also opposed to the plan. It's even using its fleet of garbage trucks to make the point.
The waste management company Suez says most of the waste will come from construction material and that its process is designed to remove plastics. But it acknowledges there may still be a minimal amount of residual plastics left over.
The work done to find out the health impacts is usually 20 years too late because it takes a long time for this to build up and cause the cancers that grow.
For families like the O'Briens, it's a nervous wait.
We'll need to consider our options and possibly move away.
The state government will ultimately decide the project's fate once the final applications are lodged. Tony Ibrahim, ABC News, Sydney.
Tess Coady has won Australia's first medal at the Winter Olympics in Beijing, taking bronze in the women's snowboard slopestyle. The 21-year-old tore her ACL at the 2018 Games, but 4 years on, she's become the first Australian to win an Olympic medal in slopestyle. Here's the ABC's Winter Olympics reporter, Tracy Holmes.
There she is, Tess Coady.
St Kilda's Tess Coady qualified 8th for the final, but say Coady endured a nerve-wracking wait while competitors were unable to push her out of 3rd spot.
She's done it! Securing the bronze medal.
Yes! Let's go! That was pretty insane. I sort of was convincing myself that I was going to come 4th, just so that when it happened it would like suck a bit less, but yeah, no, stoked that it held.
Zoe Zadowski-Synnott won New Zealand's first ever gold at a Winter Olympics.
She stops it! Okay, this brings tears to the eyes of...
It's so sick, the camaraderie is insane, and that was such a special moment down the bottom with all the girls. Yeah, it was fun.
Needs to have a smoking run from here.
Having recently...
The last however many years, feeling a little bit embarrassed. You know, I'm so much better than that.
Olympic debutant
has actually no idea about skiing, so he's just provided me with some just great advice about, you know, how to prepare, consistency, you know, when to relax, when to turn on.
Winter sports great Shaun White has announced these games will be his last. The 35-year-old American has won 3 Olympic gold medals in half-pipe snowboarding.
And Tracy Holmes joins us now from Beijing. Tracy, our curlers have had just a win against Switzerland after what's been a tumultuous day. What happened?
It's been an unbelievable day, Jeremy. They woke up this morning. Tali Gill had tested positive twice in the past 24 hours to COVID as a result of viral shedding from a previous infection. She was given an ultimatum, go into isolation or go home. They elected to go home, but while they were preparing to leave, the expert medical panel here had a meeting and decided the rate of positive was so low that she was no threat of infecting anybody, and they were told they could resume competition. They've had a 9-6 win against Switzerland, their first win here at the Olympics, and there's still another match to come against Canada later tonight.
And Tracy, Australia has more medal hopes in tonight's events. What can we look forward to?
Yes, all eyes should be kept on the women's moguls final because Jakara Anthony's in red-hot form. She qualified fastest for the event. She's a fourth-place finisher in Pyeongchang at the last Winter Olympics, hoping to break into the medals, as is Britt Cox, who's been trying since Vancouver 2010, this being her 4th Olympic Games, hoping to finish with a medal. Maybe tonight is her night.
Tracy Holmes in Beijing. With the women's Ashes already in the bag, Australia's continuing its dominance in the series, today thumping England by 5 wickets in the second one-dayer. The focus now turns to completing a clean sweep of the one-day matches in Tuesday's final game of the series.
Australian captain Meg Lanning sent England in after winning the toss, and initially it looked a bold move. But Australia had both England openers inside 11 overs and then claimed Nat Siver to start yet another collapse.
Cries of catch it and safely taken.
5 for 11 across 9 overs England lost. Lanning with a late nomination for the catch of the summer.
It's not past Meg Lanning, it's gone into her hand.
Sophie Eccleston's unbeaten 32 added some respectability, but 129 all out felt well short of par.
Edged and gone.
In reply, Rachel Haynes looked strong until she offered an edge.
Oh, edged and taken by
Jones.
Before the skipper fell the same way and to the same bowler as in the last match.
And bowls her again.
And so, having already destroyed England with the ball, taking 3 wickets each, Talia McGrath and Elise Perry set about finishing them off with the bat.
What's this back down the ground?
But McGrath played a round one from Cape Cross and Perry was caught short, leaving Ash Gardner to complete the task.
Up and over the top from Ash Gardner.
England left with a familiar tale, the loss of regular wickets in their batting innings, again their downfall.
Just find a way to get some partnerships together, really, because that's what we're lacking. We've had a few starts and a few little partnerships, but haven't really been able to get that big game-defining partnership.
So it was nice to be able to sort of, finish them off, I guess, take those 10 wickets, and we would have probably liked to finish it off a little bit better with the bat, but nice to get the win nonetheless.
The Women's Ashes wraps up in Melbourne on Tuesday before both sides head to New Zealand to commence quarantine ahead of next month's World Cup. Brett McKay, ABC News.
As Cricket Australia deals with the fallout from the shock resignation of former coach Justin Langer, questions are being asked about the internal workings of the organisation. Langer is quarantining in Perth after he sensationally quit the job via social media on Saturday morning following months of speculation over his future. The veteran cricket correspondent Gideon Haigh says the whole incident leaves a sour taste.
With that sense that you often get in Australian cricket of that you're not being told everything that matters, and also of a sense of just how little people seem to matter at Jolimont. If they treat a great servant of the game like this, just imagine what they get away with in private.
Langer released his resignation letter late today to the Australian newspaper. He says he's happy with his decision to reject the short-term deal offered to him and that he hopes the Australian team has made supporters proud in the 4 years he was in charge. In the A-League Women, Melbourne City has won its 4th straight game, defeating the Western Sydney Wanderers 2-1. City forward Rihanna Policina opened the scoring in the 28th minute for the home side and then soon added a second.
What a goal! Holly McNamara, the real deal.
The Wanderers got one back before half-time through Tegan Collister, but City held on for the win. In the men's competition, the Wellington Phoenix has snapped a 4-game losing streak, defeating the Macarthur Bulls 3-1. 2 goals by Phoenix striker Josh Sotirio put the result beyond doubt. Let's take a look at the weather now. More partly cloudy skies today with flashes of sunshine and a couple of light showers. Overnight and daytime temperatures have been fairly close to average for this time of year. Statewide, it's been a relatively cool day with below average temperatures overnight and during the day. Winds were generally easterly, which explains why the showers have been confined to the coastal districts today. Those winds were fresh to strong at times, keeping daytime temperatures subdued as well. There's cloud skimming across most of the east coast with these onshore winds feeding into a trough and delivering some scattered showers all the way to the top end. Patchy high cloud over southern and western New South Wales is not generating any rain. From about Wednesday, the low pressure system moves offshore, giving us a couple of days of clearance for some warm, sunny weather. Tomorrow, however, showers are possible in Brisbane. It'll be partly cloudy in Canberra and Adelaide, mostly sunny in Melbourne and Hobart. For us tomorrow, it's more of the same in the northeast. Again, partly cloudy with a medium chance of showers. Tops in the mid to high 20s. A hazardous surf warning and marine wind warning for strong winds are still current between Byron and Hunter Waters, and that continues tomorrow. The southeast too will get a partly cloudy day with a medium chance of showers. Take care if you're heading to the coast. Hazardous surf will remain down to the Illawarra coast. The showers will potentially extend to the ranges, but it should be dry and mostly sunny further west, with top temperatures in the 30s. Large and powerful surf in Sydney will be accompanied by swells up to 3 metres. It'll be a partly cloudy day. There may be a shower or two up to 4 millimetres, most likely in the morning. Overnight lows in the mid-teens and tops in the low 20s. The showers may linger into Tuesday, but on Wednesday we're still looking at the likelihood of some showers, some sunshine and temperatures into the 30s. Showers, though, may return in time for next weekend. And that is the latest from ABC News Sunday. From all of us, thanks for your company. Have a good evening.
Next, the